everyone, and welcome to Wisdom Wednesday with the Charlotte Center for the Humanities and Civic Imagination. My name is Jennifer Dow, and I'm the CEO and founder of Padea Fellowship and serve on the team here with the Charlotte Center in the marketing communications area. I am here first to welcome you, second to share with you how to engage in today's session. The first 30 minutes of our time together will be a conversation between Angela, our host, and our guest. As you listen, we invite you to share your thoughts in the chat. Next, we will open it up to you to ask questions. We invite you to put those questions in the chat, or better yet, if you're willing, come on the screen where we will have you ask your question in person. We invite each of you to turn on your cameras if you are comfortable. It is my pleasure to introduce Angela Gala.
Thank you, Jennifer. Hello and welcome to Wisdom Wednesdays. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Angela Gala, and I'm with the Charlotte Center for the Humanities and Civic Imagination. I'm going to read you a quote by English polymath Bertrand Russell from his 1931 treatise, The Scientific Outlook. I'm going to read it slowly because it's tough to take in, but it's important to this conversation. When science is considered contemplatively, not practically, we find that what we believe owing to animal faith, and it is only our disbeliefs that are due to science. When, on the other hand, science is considered as a technique for the transformation of ourselves and our environment, it is found to give us a power quite independent of its metaphysical validity. But we can only wield this power by ceasing to ask ourselves metaphysical questions about the nature of reality. Yet these questions are the evidence of a lover's attitude toward the world. Thus, it is only insofar as we renounce the world as its lovers that we can conquer it as its technicians. But this division in the soul is fatal to what is best in man. As soon as the failure of science considered as metaphysics is realized, the power conferred by science as a technique is only obtainable by the renunciation of love. As my friend and colleague Jennifer noted, this passage embodies the fact that a lot of us hear science and think undisputed facts. We forget that it too gets to be a conversation. Our mission at the center is to help people and communities flourish. One way we do that is to hold conversations like these on important topics through the lens of the humanities. Wisdom Wednesdays is us together being onto something. I would like to thank our sponsor and partner, OrthoCarolina, for this series, along with all of our donors and supporters for their investment in our efforts and in our community. You make our work possible. Rob Slee is co-founder of Sky AI, the worldwide commercialization arm of Skymind Holdings, a leading global AI firm. Rob has authored more than 500 articles on private finance topics in a variety of legal and business journals. Rob's book, Private Capital Markets, is considered the seminal work in finance for private companies. Rob also authored Middle Market M&A, Midas Managers, Midas Marketing, and Time Really Is Money. He has owned equity positions in dozens of private businesses, and in 2015, he founded his first unicorn, a private company with a valuation over $1 billion. He has also mentored more than 100 companies. For more than 25 years, Rob has also been president of Robertson & Foley, a middle market private investment bank. In that time, Robertson & Foley has advised on billions of dollars of capital raises and exits. He is a Phi Beta Kappa graduate of Miami University and received a master's degree from the University of Chicago and an MBA from Case Western Reserve University. But Rob is most proud of his role as the father of his identical twin daughters. For the past few years, I've invited Rob to lunch at least once a year. I can't say why he agrees to come, but I invite him because I don't know anyone else who thinks like he does. He makes connections that no one else sees and has the wherewithal to act on them and see them through over very long periods of time. I need these lunches because Rob expands my mind and introduces me to a new perspective. But neither of these would be enough to motivate me to keep in touch over the years. What draws me in is that while Rob left the family farm where he grew up a very long time ago, that salt of the earth upbringing hasn't left him. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
No, thank you. Thank you.
I appreciate it. So I'm going to start with an easy question. Hmm. What is AI?
Yeah, it's broadly speaking, it's just intelligence demonstrated by machines. So machines' ability to think and plan accordingly, to actually develop a plan and a goal and meet it effectively, which is both scary. It's a little enlightening and frightening at the same time.
Indeed. So there's machine learning and deep learning. What's the difference between the two things?
Yeah, machine learning came first, and it probably dates back 30 years ago. And that those are just algorithms that automatically improve through experience. So the example of that would be IBM's Deep Blue, the program, the machine learning program back in the 1990s. I think it was 1997 that beat the reigning world chess champion.
Mhm.
So that would be an example of a machine that played tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of games of chess and learned how to be the world chess champion, basically.
And
Or
then go ahead, deep
yeah,
learning.
deep learning is the evolution of it. They say it's a subset of machine learning. I look at it more as an evolution of machine learning. It tries to attempts to imitate the neural networks of the human brain. So it has layers, whereas machine learning is a binary logic, almost decision trees based on rules. Deep learning is similar, although not identical, to the way humans think, which is may have dozens, hundreds of layers of thinking. So deep learning is where AI is going, and the example of that is Google's AlphaGo, where it beat the world Go champion. Go at primarily an Asian or Chinese game, but Go has an infinite amount of moves with every move, unlike chess, which has a finite amount. And AlphaGo had to learn through deep learning how to train itself to learn the game Go and then to go so many levels deep that it could surpass humans' ability to play the game.
Is it true that now AI and that deep learning is learning that it's learning how to improve itself?
Yeah, and create itself. And that's the part that's both enlightening and frightening to me is that humans are giving it general direction now. And this is the cutting edge part of AI, but giving it direction like we want to make a car that has these fundamentals and these variables. And the AI is creating creating another AI design program to actually do all the design. It really is leveraging human talents beyond what I ever imagined could be done.
And so you can lend your time, talent, and treasure to a lot of things. Why did you choose to invest in AI?
Yeah, it was probably 5 or 6 years ago. I started running into it like we all do in my daily life, and I just felt I didn't understand it well enough to be able to use it personally or in my businesses. I was fortunate at that point. I ran into a Malaysian company that Skymind Holdings that we were the first, by the way, to diagnose the coronavirus in Wuhan. It was our AI, Axial AI, that did that, and so we were in 60 hospitals in and around Wuhan for the first 4 or 5 months, and we were the only AI that the Chinese government had access to. And so I've been in the arena with, now it's COVID, but at that point it was a undescribed or non-described coronavirus. So I've been in that arena since the first week of December 2019.
Okay. And so medical field is one of your interests and what AI can do because
Yeah, it's changing medicine. It isn't a futuristic thing. Most of what I'm going to talk about AI today isn't in the future, it's in the now.
okay.
And the healthcare is one of them. Now there are, even though we were the first, now there are 250 AI programs that both diagnose and or treat various diseases. So this is a thing that it's to the point where even our AI, and we're probably not the most advanced on all disease. We developed it to diagnose 24 different diseases, from cardiovascular to cancer to anything that can happen in the human body on a cellular level. That's why we created the program. Well, the next step in all this is not just the diagnosis, it's the treatment. So the treatment will be cellular going forward on every disease, which is which isn't going to end diseases, but it's going to change the way we view diseases as a society. Won't be so terminal, is what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in your opinion, how's it going to impact us realistically?
Yeah, I mean, we'll live longer. I mean, those of us that have access, there's always a question of, do you have access to top end medical care? And I mean, that those sorts of issues. The people that have access to that, and this is a worldwide thing, it's not just a US thing. All this AI for healthcare diagnostic and treatment is worldwide. We still are mainly in Asia. So, I mean, we know more about what's going on in Asian healthcare than the US, strangely enough, even though I live in the US. But yeah, I think what will happen is it will extend the people that have access. It'll extend their lives 5 to 10 years in our generation, I believe.
Okay. And you're in Asia on purpose.
Yeah, it's just because the Chinese government, it turns out, was more amenable to lending the resources or investing the resources in our project than anyone in the US. And what I've tried to do over the last 25 years is I always try to do these unwinnable business fights first in the US. And then when through regulation or through lack of opportunity, I end up going to Asia to actually get it done. And that was the case there. We developed the whole program in Shanghai.
So you have mentioned that their government's investing in it and ours is not.
Yeah,
They've
taken the
out.
lead. Yeah, they've taken the lead. The Chinese government, they could see, probably 10 years ago that AI is one of the 3 or 4 areas that they thought that they could develop a more sophisticated ecosystem within their country, and not just healthcare AI in a variety of usages. And we've been sort of arguing about various things in this country, but AI really hasn't been one of them. When AI comes up in our government, it's more of as a threat, I think, than as a solution.
So are we behind?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, at 3 to 5 years. And see, the problem, and I write about this in all my books, is that with not just AI technology, but all technology, change is now exponential. So change happens exponentially, and humans are wired for incremental change, 2 + 2 + 2. But now with technology, it enables exponential change. And so being 3 to 5 years ahead in AI is a very dangerous thing to be behind that far.
Well, right. I mean, even well, all right. We'll get to dual use in just a minute because I want to just follow. I need to bring everybody along to where we've already been. You're also now using AI in agriculture.
Yeah, that's something I'm project managing. I didn't project manage the healthcare thing. I was involved, but I didn't project manage it. Yeah, I mean, in this case, we're trying to change indoor cultivation. So it's, it used to be, 30 years ago, I was one of the first people to do lights out manufacturing in America. So I actually was the project manager for one of the first plastics plants in the world. Anyways, to go totally lights out. Now I'm doing sort of lights on agriculture, indoor agriculture, such that the AI controls every aspect of the grow. So there are a dozen key variables, a lot of which lights, fertigation, humidity, those things. Then there's 8 or 10 things that you don't really think about too much, pH of the soil, those sorts of things. And what we're doing is trying to control every single variable through AI, so there's no human interaction at all as the plants grow indoors. It's the way that I think all indoor agriculture will be done within 3 years.
So some of the things that you've said, so everything, all AI is dual use, right?
Yeah, and that's both the opportunity and the problem. Yeah, and there's no stopping that. You're going to have, no matter what the program, you're going to have good usages and bad actor usages of it. And the people that need business ethics course the most are the least likely to ever set foot in the room. And we run into this all the time, especially in Asia because it's more advanced there. But bad decision usage of AI, and I think that's going to continue. That's whether it's deep fakes. I think the 60 Minutes episode recently shined a light on deep fake technology, and so there's AI that sniffs out deep fakes and can cancel it out. But for the most part, you have to have access to that good deep fake technology to cancel out the bad. And so I think the rest of our lives, this is going to be a yin and the yang of technology as far as AI goes.
And so I'm going to back up to what you said about agriculture and about AI kind of building itself, if you will. There's not a lot of humans involved in that.
Well,
do?
It's true. No, it's true. A typical indoor grower, and what I'm talking about, we've started out in cannabis in California, just because it's such a high value crop, I can make a lot of mistakes. If you'd start out in leafy greens and that, it's so tight on the margins that I can't make enough mistakes. It takes several years to learn how to do any of this, to And so, and if you're not making some money along the way, you don't get there. But in any event, so yeah, this is, yeah, I forgot the question. I'm sorry. What was the question?
No, that's okay. What are we going to do?
Oh, yeah.
If I didn't have a purpose, if I didn't have work, I mean, I have a purpose beyond work. I've got my
Yeah.
children, I've got my
Right.
family, but I need something more than that. If I'm not AI literate, nor I'm barely computer literate, much less.
Right.
What are all the farmers going to do? What are all the workers going to do when AI takes over? Because I can see this spiraling into a lot of things. I mean, already into healthcare, already into agriculture. What are we going to do?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, in one of our typical facilities, we used to have 60 or 80 employees, now we'll have 10. And those 10 tend to be more technicians, because as AI links to robotics, and that's where it's going. The example I like to use is we're in hundreds of McDonald's in Asia where AI takes the order. You go pull up in the drive-through, AI takes the order, AI signals the robots to make whatever's done. A conveyor brings the food, the order. AI does all of the billing. You've never talked to a human. You've never interacted with a human in that entire chain there, and you got your food. And that's not futuristic. I mean, that's right now. And so as we link robots into all of our indoor harvesting, mainly it'll be the harvesting, I got to tell you, I don't have a great answer for what humans going to do. I know what 1% of the humans are going to do. They're going to link into the AI part of it, and be data filter people. There'll be programmers. There'll be technicians. There's going to be a tremendous amount of people the rest of this decade, trained along those lines. I don't have a great feel for what the average Joe or Sally does out there to earn a living. I really don't. I think about this constantly, and I don't have a great answer for that.
But you've had some thoughts on it, and I found that your thoughts were very interesting, although they kind of left me a little depressed for a little bit. I think it's something that we kind of need to explore.
Yeah, I mean,
I want to explore that.
Yeah, I mean, universal basic income is where this ends up, and my own thoughts are is the COVID pandemic gave governments around the world a trial run on universal basic income. These basic, entitlement packages have been put out, whether you work or not, you get. And I think that was a dry run for what's coming the rest of this decade. So to keep the peace and to keep people, at least so they can feed themselves and go through the drive-through at the roboticized, AI-sized McDonald's, I think the world, not just the U.S., the world will be moving more towards universal basic income.
And so we're looking at a Ready Player One universe.
Yes, I mean, and that's where the metaverse. If you haven't heard that term yet, you'll hear the word metaverse a lot in the next few years. Ready Player One had that figured out in the movie, where its protagonist is living in a virtual world basically, and there's a contest in that virtual reality world, although it's so much more immersive than just for virtual reality. And so to get ahead, you had to win contests in the virtual reality metaverse. The metaverse is coming to a computer near you in the next year. And so all the big tech companies, and all of them, Apple, Microsoft, all of them, and Google especially, are trying out, and Facebook are trying out various interfaces to the metaverse, and such that you'll enter this world through some sort of goggle system, virtual reality. But from that point forward, you might live most of your life in that metaverse, which is it's just so peculiar. If you've been to Japan lately, Japan has already entered the metaverse in the weirdest way possible, that the under 30-year-olds don't have human contact the way we would consider human contact. They don't build relationships in the way we would consider healthy. And so that's the first country to enter the metaverse, even though they haven't called it that. That's what it is. And I find it very disturbing, because that's not how we're wired as humans. We're wired for more contact, not less. And the metaverse is going to give a lot of millions, billions of people the means to not have typical human contact.
Right. So as much as we lament the fact that our kids are always on their phone and they can text each other while they're sitting next to each other versus talking to each other, we're in for something even bigger. I was tooling around on Facebook's Oh gosh, I don't know what it was. It was their thoughts on the metaverse. And one of the things that they said was it's not necessarily about spending more time in the virtual world. It's about the quality of time you spend. And that
Yeah.
made me sit up and go, yeah, I don't think that is what that's about.
No, it isn't how it's
I
going to
think you
work.
just said the reverse of what that's about.
Yeah,
It's
it's
about
so
spending more
immersive.
time.
It pulls you in. It's sort of like the technology answer to what drugs were, illegal drugs, non-prescription drugs were meant to do. Take you out of the real world that isn't maybe working out for you for a certain person, and you enter a world of your own design, so to speak. I believe that's what the metaverse will be in the next couple of years. Is it will take those who want to be taken out of the world we would consider a real world. They'll have an access to that metaverse world.
And as the gap between the haves and the have-nots increase, and the number of people at that kind of have-not level increases, the world's not kind to them. The metaverse is going to be a whole lot more kind.
Yeah, they've already sort of taken a couple steps to that world. Gaming was probably the first, and then virtual reality was another step. And the metaverse will be so much more inclusive. I believe all the technology already exists for it. It's just a matter of you can't just all of a sudden launch these sorts of things. I've seen a few of the comments from the listeners say that Facebook's rebranding itself along metaverse lines, and they're going to go all in on this. They see that once you control somebody's mind to that level, the advertisers really like that. It all comes down to money, right? I mean, that's what this is.
Well,
Money
right.
and
And
power.
so, and to your point, big data is the commodity, right?
Yeah, it's
Increasing.
funny. It's funny you'd ask that question because I've come to the opposite conclusion on this. Whoever, and this is what I've learned through applying AI, whoever owns or controls the big data owns that segment of the market. And what I mean by that is the reason Facebook and Google and that accumulate so much information on us, behavioral and otherwise, purchasing information, how we spend our time. They know more about us than we know about us in some ways, and they own that data. And so it's really a scary thing to me because what we're seeing is once somebody owns that data, it's actually the algorithms that are the commodity. I would make that case right now that there's 5,000, 100,000 people that can program the algorithm sufficiently such that it's the data that separates the winners and losers. And that's the part that scares me because who controls the big data? Governments control big data. Big tech controls big data. None of us on this call probably control big data. And so as we're learning how to use AI for indoor agriculture, it's all in the data because all the sensors we're using are the same as other people. The controllers, the humidity controllers and all that's the same. What's different is the quality of the data. Whoever has high quality, so let me make sure no vague references here. So as we put one, let's say a 20,000 square foot greenhouse that's fully controlled by AI, every sense of it, I can duplicate that 100 different times over because I have the data to do it. I'm growing the same exact crops, the same strains of marijuana. I'm using the same greenhouse. It basically, I then can replicate that product anywhere on earth because I have the data.
But your point was you didn't develop this so that you could grow more cannabis because we need more cannabis in the world. You grow
No, it's
cannabis
a safe
because you
variant.
can make all those mistakes without going so
Yeah,
far in the hole.
right.
But your eventual use for this is because you think we're going to need it?
Yeah, I think with global warming, that my unicorn is I'm the person that's fiber wiring or has fiber wired the Arctic. So all of Alaska or most of Alaska and the northern Canada, we've laid over 5,000 miles of fire. A person from Charlotte, I live in Charlotte. A person from Charlotte is fiber wired the Arctic. Let's just focus on that for a second. How did that happen? But in any event, I mean, geez, but that happened. And the reason
You?
I did that, this is the first time 5 years ago when we started laying cable in the Bering Sea and on land there, is the first time in human history, or at least the last few thousand years, that it could be done because of global warming. The way the way the earth rotates, the poles warm up fastest first. And up until 5 years ago, it would have been engineering impossibility to do what we did. And so that got me thinking. I said, wait a minute, what's this? Whether it's man-made or not, I mean, I know there's a lot of arguments about that. Not in my mind, but I know other people have arguments about that. The fact of the matter is, the climate has changed and is going to continue to change, regardless of whatever causes it. And we're gonna have to feed ourselves. And so where I want to fit in on that is to use technology so we can feed ourselves locally. I'll
Right.
put a greenhouse on top of Bank of America parking garage and grow tomatoes and leafy greens and deliver it down to the first floor.
Right, because you think
That's
we're
the
going to
vision.
have to, because to your point that you made earlier in another conversation we had, we can't even agree that global warming is happening and that we're responsible for it. So we can't agree on those 2 points. So our trajectory is to continue heading down the road we're heading.
Yes, and so instead of me getting in the big argument of causation, what I did is I accepted as a fact that we have global warming. I mean, you just go to Alaska if you don't believe me. All the glaciers that were there 10 years ago, they're not there. And so I took a big chance going up there thinking that we could, from an engineering perspective, lay that cable. We have done. And so now I'm taking a big chance on, I think, the non-corn, non-wheat world is about the specialty items are about to be grown locally and indoors. That's what my vision is.
Interesting. So you're in the medical field and the agricultural field, and there's always dual use. What is the potential for the other side of things with the technology you're developing?
Yeah, well, I mean, medical, it's kind of happening in China now with the CRISPR technology, which is basically an AI-based genetic editing. You can do an awful, I mean, there's been a lot of stuff in the last 100 years about, creating pure populations and genetic editing and filtering. That enables that. So the opposite side of the coin of healthcare is genetic editing, which, you get into these philosophical issues of, is that good or bad? You need,
Well,
yeah.
right. Well, and to your point, so there's a article is called the Rise of Godlike Beings by Mark Walker. He's an academic. And he said engineering technologies will make it possible to accomplish in a matter of years what evolution would take thousands of millennia to achieve.
Yeah.
And he cites the genetic engineering, advanced pharmacology, advanced computing technology, and cyborg technology, and
Yeah.
all of the potentials that it has to increase the capacity of our brains. But if we're increasing the capacity of our brains, does that mean that understanding increases as well? Or does that just mean capacity to do what? I'm kind of confused as to where we're going with that, because the other argument he's making is that humans will eventually be to AI what apes are to humans.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
regular us normal birthed humans who haven't been like
Right.
messed around with, right?
Right.
And so that's all kind of a scary thought.
Well, we're not ready for it. What I think, my own personal view on this, having been out there speaking for 25 years and writing so much about this edge technology and applying edge technologies, is 1/10 of 1% of us, for some reason, can look forward and kind of see how the game's going to progress before it starts. And that 1/10 of 1% is who gathers up all the wealth. So one of the reasons we have the have and have not society is a very small group of people on earth have been able to harness technology in a way that helps them meet their goals. And they're not they're not driven by a sharing motive. That's typically, personal aggrandizement and wealth building. And I'm a capitalist. I can't shoot at that. But where I think the rubber hits the road is when the next step happens, which is happening right now. Who harnesses this and for what purpose? Who harnesses AI and for what purpose? That's the frightening part of this to me.
And where are those conversations happening? The for what purpose?
Well, it's happening in academic settings where it doesn't matter because the academics aren't driving this. I've taught in hundreds of college campuses, mainly for MBAs, but and where the real action isn't there. That's not where real commercialization happens. That's not where the edge is typically on application of technology. unfortunately, it's where it needs to happen, those conversations, that's not what's driving those people to do more. That's not what they're trying to do, is achieve a certain goal. And ethics aren't exactly top of mind.
Without regard to the eventuality of how it
Yeah,
impacts the society
yeah.
as a whole. But the people in those schools, so it's happening in academics, but the students are going to be the next generation, but they're going to be too far behind it to impact it, is what you're saying.
Well, that, and plus, I mean, look, we've been teaching ethics at Harvard Business School for 50 years, and look, I mean,
We're
so
still
I mean, these things don't necessarily take. If you have a sinister-based mind, and a certain percent of every population does, it's more how you're raised, what's your worldview, and some people, their worldview is to have more power rather than shared power, and if we enable them, or they're enabled with this sort of technology, we're all going to have to deal with it. We're all going to deal with it one way or another.
Yeah, right. Okay. And oh gosh, I just forgot my train of thought, because you had said something else that I kind of wanted to go back to, and I'll get to it. I see that there is a ton of happenings in the chat. So I don't know if we need to visit some of these questions and let everybody else in to this conversation instead of me monopolizing your time.
I'll follow your lead on this.
Yeah. Jennifer, is there anything that anybody want to ask your question directly?
Yes, Laura Neff is up first.
Welcome, Laura.
Hi, hey everybody. Hi, Rob.
Hey.
So this question picks up, I think, where you just were, which is back earlier in the conversation when you were talking about healthcare. I caught like a couple times where you said, people who have access, the people who have access.
Yeah.
And then, so it made me wonder, like, is this really going to widen the gap between, how things are going now? Is it going to widen the socioeconomic gap? We're in a city that's still working on economic mobility, and all this stuff sounds great. And then here we go in technology. And then also I was curious about the big data conversation. Made me think about, I think a couple of years ago, Twitter tried an algorithm account, and it ended up just completely remaking the racial biases of the people who created it and all of that. And so like, if big data is creating all of this technology, is anybody looking out for that?
No, these are, I think about this all the time. I didn't mention what AI's strongest suit is. What it does best is it can sort through tremendous amounts of data and find patterns. It identifies patterns. And so it kind of shows us who we are. I hate to say this, but it kind of shows us who we are, because, once you have 10 million pieces of information about a behavior or anything, AI is very good at sorting through that. It's what it was really designed to do. And so, unfortunately, the people that have this sort of big data, the big tech companies, why are they in business? Yes, it's money and power. It's money and power. I mean, that's in our quasi-capitalistic economy right now. It's always money and power, and that's not going to change. And that's a worldwide issue. So I believe in the next year or two, the healthcare, going back to your original question, the gap will be broader, because as the AI and the technology becomes more ubiquitous, then it'll be more available, I think, to the masses. Right now, you almost have to be invited into some of these studies, because this stuff, like I'm tied to Case Western still, because I went there, and maybe the top person in the world for cancer research is using AI to target individual cancer cells. And it's just fascinating, but you got to be invited into those.
Right.
I mean, so, in about a year or two, if I sense where he's going, and I think I have it, a year or two, that will be in the Cleveland Clinic. If you have access to the Cleveland Clinic, which is just down the street from where he's doing all his tests, you see how that's going to work? So maybe by the end, end of this decade, it'll be more available. But it's kind of how technology always works. It's the chosen few, at first.
Yeah.
So.
Can I ask one quick follow-up question?
Sure.
So it sounds like, from part of what I take from what you just shared, is that without intervention, AI continues to show us who we've been.
Yeah.
And so, versus, like, do you know of, as this technology continues showing us who we've been, do you know of any intervening efforts to link up with, all the people who are trying to create a new world and a new experience of life?
Yeah, and there are there are groups of people that are not quietly fighting back on this. I would say I'm one of those people that I see that there's a coming, it's coming, that the good versus the bad is going to hit the technology, and you've got to be really smart. What I've noticed about the sinister, the bad actors, is they're bad 24/7. The good people are good occasionally to bump up against the bad. Have you noticed this in life? And this is the problem we have, is that good is intermittent. Good will meet the bad on the playing field from time to time. Bad's bad all the time. And that this is the real problem I think we're going to have with AI, because bad is really they've got some goals to meet, and they're not stopping for anybody. So yeah, so I'm a little concerned about that, because I see where it's going. So.
Got to get to the gym.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Tomas.
Hey, Rob, thank you so much for, it's fascinating.
Thank you.
Coincidentally enough, I was this weekend in Denver speaking at a conference for learning, the future of learning. And the topic was learning in 2070, and a lot of the similar themes I was researching, preparing for it. And one of my thoughts was, is kind of the future more this kind of partnership of AI and humans, and what is our role in that partnership? I mean,
Right.
What is it that AI cannot do for sure? And what is it that humans can do? And how then does that impacts the way that we start to prepare for that, so there's a lot of questions as part of that, but let's start there.
Well, so first of all, given what the focus of this general conversation is perfect, because I'm a humanities person. I'm a person that, if you could dream it, you can make it happen, and you can engage STEM and other technologies to make it happen, but you got to dream it. What the AI can't do, and I'm a history major, by the way, what the AI can't do is live in that dream state. It can live in the state that we create for it, and it can do real well there. But I got an idea, I'm going to go fiber wire the Arctic. Excuse me, AI isn't doing that. So the way I look at going forward is, we're all humans going forward are going to be conductors of their own symphonies, so to speak, where we design the symphony, we conduct it, we bring the resources in necessary to play it. We're not going to play every instrument. AI isn't going to play every instrument. AI will help us play that symphony. But so this is that entrepreneurial thing that has to happen, because we're all conductors of our own symphony right now, whether we know it or not. And so in that sense, we have a big advantage. Humans have a tremendous, AI doesn't know anything. AI can sort through stuff, but it doesn't know anything. It doesn't know cat from dog. So we have a tremendous design dream capability that AI, I don't believe, will ever have. I'm telling you, most data scientists think that AI hasn't whipped the Turing test yet. Alan Turing back in 1950 said, if there was a curtain between you and somebody else and you were having a conversation, could you tell if that's a computer or a human? A lot of now, I think it's whipped it. I think that current AI has whipped it, but I'd say most data scientists say that AI has not passed the Turing test yet. So it tells me that the humans, those of us who are conductors of our own symphony and accept it and own it, are going to be just fine. Is how I look at it.
So just a quick follow-up to that, then, having said what you just said, how would you consult with educational kind of schooling, just to keep it to K-12 maybe, in their mindset of what do they do different from what they're doing today?
Well, yeah, I've always said I'm a big left brain versus right brain learning guy. I've written a couple books just on this. And I believe that all of the routine stuff, the reading, writing, arithmetic, needs to happen online, left brain. And I believe all the application, go build a house together, work in teams to build a computer program together. The application of the left brain is all right brain stuff. That would happen in the classroom. I just really think that we have got to start applying this stuff. And we're, unfortunately, our whole education system, and I know this isn't with the purpose of, but our whole education system is left brain based. And every once in a while, the US pops out of Steve Jobs, or the world pops out of Elon Musk, who's a right brain app applier. But we have got to start creating these people. We cannot just hope for the best that 1 out of 10 million people are that. We have got to create these people. And right now, we're not doing that.
Well, and you taught your girls on those principles, right?
Yeah, I mean,
You forced them to use both sides of their brain. So they have what, a physics major, and they double majored in physics and what, English?
English, because what you do is the basics or the left brain stuff is taught in school. Give your kids a fractal problem if they've already had geometry, because fractal is the right brain application of left brain geometry. Give your kids, go out after they've had some geometry, go out and have them measure square feet of the driveway in concrete that has various shapes. See, that's what I mean. I mean, it starts out simple. Incentivize your kids to apply right brain simply, and then it gets more and more complex. And then write a computer, and I never tell them what they have to, how they should do it. The learning is, oh, I've got to go learn fractals to be able to solve that problem. Or, oh, that's the aha moment, is when you learn to apply the left brain stuff, you actually have to go learn something, then apply it. And that's what we're not doing. That's the missing part of our school system. And when we whip that, I'm telling you, we universal basic income will be a thing that we won't talk about.
Yeah, critical thinking is missing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Tomas, you brought up Neuralink, and I'm actually interested in what Rob thinks about that too. So, you know, it's focused on making medical devices to help people with a wide range of injuries and neurological disorders. But on their website, they say that while that's their mission, what their hope is that perfectly healthy people will want this too.
Yeah.
And of course, that just gave me chills. I'm like, okay, perfectly healthy people need this for what?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, performance enhancement is always going to be an issue for, it's that dual usage you know we were talking about. So I think to help people that can't help themselves through technology, I'm all for it. I mean, and if there's some overlap or some stuff, you know, people abuse it, you know, it's just,
You're not going to be
I'll put
able
up
to
with it.
control it.
I'll put up with it. Yeah, I can't control it. I'll put up with it. So.
Right.
All right.
Anything else, Tomas? No, you're good.
Thank you.
Thank
Jennifer,
you.
what else we have?
Yeah, Gina. Gina is next.
Yes. This is one of my favorite topics. I've been picking it up lately. I've been following Sydney Bowell. She's a futurist and has been leading a conversation across multiple organizations on what AI impact will have in the application for social impact. Some of the things that she had brought up really talk about the removing of that human component into the distribution of goods and products and services. There is another, I was trying to identify the book. It was an audible, I have to go back and look. But another book that was talking about big data, artificial intelligence, and distribution of entitlement benefits, and how removing the moral component and the human component will create bigger disparities, bigger inequity in our communities. So for me, that's where we as civic folks come in to advocate for smarter choices around the ethics and the application of AI. And I think we have our work cut out for us, looking at, for example, one of the things when entitlement benefits such as food stamps, Medicare, Medicaid was transitioned to digital applications, we had a huge, we lost a lot of the communities, a lot of the families, individuals who were utilizing the services because AI will tell you if you miss to check one box, it will deny your application because of that.
Right.
So I think when we're looking at data gathering and talking about poverty and talking about education and all of this, I think there is a bigger conversation that we should be paying attention in. How do we really challenge organizations to be thinking about these applications and the impact that we'll have? What do you have to say, Rob, about?
Well, I agree. I've just been on the other side of that curtain, the Turing curtain, with those organizations. And I got to tell you, it's been lip service so far. And part of the reason is Google, just take Google, for example, they invested and lost over $500 million 3 straight years in their DeepMind division, their AI division. This is the first year they've ever made any money, and they're breaking even on AI. They really, as they were losing all that money, they really weren't spending much time thinking about societal impact, societal good. They were just thinking about how do we ever make money. And what I've noticed is AI is about ready to start making a lot of money. Like we've never made money in AI. I mean, geez, there it is. It takes, 5 years to make any money. Once it starts making money, what my fear is all the things that you fear. My fear is at that point, the horse is out of the barn. And so the time to catch all this is the early years. And at that point, they were just trying to, oh, we got to make it work. Why worry about it? Well, wait a minute. This stuff works. You can go through McDonald's now and never talk to a human or touch a human. And so I look at this and think, are we ever going to get the horse back in the barn again? I don't think so. Because there's whole countries that don't care about this. What we have is a very Western orientation towards this, but the right versus wrong, the Judeo-Christian framework of right versus wrong. Well, I got to tell you, I'm not sure we're in the majority on that worldwide in terms of that concern. And there it is. I think it's going to be the rest of our lives a real battle.
Rob, didn't you also say at one point in our conversations that you had mentioned Japan and that they're already kind of in the metaverse? And you mentioned to me earlier that society is they're not having babies.
Because there's no physical contact. Half the young adults under 30 have never had physical contact in a procreation way and never will. It's all virtual. And if you look at this and think, all right, well now that's just not a useful society going forward. They can't replace themselves as a society, so they'll go out of business as a country, which is what's happening. And B, it gets really weird. I mean, your society gets distorted quickly, and that's what's happened there. Very weird.
I'm trying to figure out how humans thrive. I mean, we know that babies in an orphanage that aren't touched, right? That don't get held, that are just they can die. So they can be fed and they can get all the nutrients they need, but if they don't get that human connection and that human touch, they can die from that.
Yeah.
What are the health outcomes for those folks? Is there a high rate of suicide there?
Yes. It's a suicide. It ends up being, we're sort of going through this quietly during this whole pandemic. Suicides are, in the U.S. even, and it's yet another thing we don't talk about. We're talking. We're in no way am I going to make this a political statement, but I say as a society right now in the last 10 years, we're not talking about the things in America that really matter for the future in my mind. And until we start talking about them, we can't solve anything. So.
Right. I saw Peter raise his hand. He's still here?
Peter's up next.
Yeah, thanks. In light of all the things we've been talking about in terms of ethics and the fear factor, do you foresee any kind of financial model that would allow companies like yours, investment firms, to go into the security, ethics, prevention area and begin to help fund that side of the, for lack of a better word, the firewall?
Yeah, no, and some of that is happening. Elon Musk is leading that charge with a number of the other large tech companies, because they can see that this could all go wrong in a heartbeat. I mean, this isn't going to be like a 10-year going wrong. This is going to be like a next year all gone wrong. And so, there's large funding going on. My concern is the thing about AI that is daunting in terms of the other side of it is just a handful of people can greatly influence. I mean, just look at how our elections work now. Our elections work in that big data has been gathered over the last 10 or 15 years to the point where they can now target, whoever the they is, can target into a household what is going to be the trigger point for that household to vote a certain way. And this is both left and right. This isn't, nobody has a monopoly on this. And I look at that and say, all right, so now if in fact it isn't always a positive message that is the trigger for somebody, it's typically a negative message that moves somebody, whether it's racial bigotry or whatever it is. It's more often a negative message. Who is the firewall right now for that? Facebook let all that happen basically. Now they're starting to give some lip service, but if you ever look inside, if you were ever sitting in a meeting with the top Facebook people, do you really think that's what's driving them? That decision making is, we got to stop the bad actors of the world. That's not what their shareholders are after. And so that's the I don't know if all the money in the world could solve this. That's kind of where I'm coming from. I don't know if this is a money problem or if this is just a humanity, how humanity now is wired problem. So I got no good answers. I got no good answers on the bad actor side of this, because I don't know how to defeat bad actors generally, other than shed a lot of light on them and try to be better at being good than they are being bad. But like I said, good is intermittent.
Well,
Good isn't. Yeah.
what about just the possibility of being able to make some money at being on that side?
Yeah,
of the
maybe
art?
I haven't. Yeah, I'm still focused on how to grow weed without people. I have to admit, I have to admit my application in AI has been very, very limited to just say, can I do something here that doesn't cost me everything? I mean, let's break it down into its basics, because you just keep putting so much money into these things. It's all technology, but AI is the same way. Is there ever going to be a point where anything comes back? And that's where I've been. And so that's kind of where I still am. At some point, I'll make a lot of money there, and then go fight evil face to face, nose to nose out in the metaverse.
But you must see proposals from time to time from people pitching to you to invest in their ideas. Are you seeing proposals that are sort of more solution based than?
I have not on the other side of it, and the reason is one thing I didn't mention is our AI. There's a number of different platforms, but we created the largest open source AI programming language called Eclipse Deep Learning 4J. So tens of thousands of companies around the world, including Apple, Microsoft, everybody who hates Google uses our 4J platform to actually create the AI. So we do have, and we're the worldwide support of that 4J program. So we do see a lot, but I have to tell you right now, because nobody's made money in AI until maybe the last just few months, but nobody's made money there, including me, that hasn't been the focus yet. All right, stop the barbarians at the gate. It hasn't been that. I think in the next couple of years, my personal focus will go there. I don't know how many will be with me, but I think I'll go there because I'm a do-gooder. I've always been one. And so I'll go there, but it'll cost me a fortune. I'll get killed, because that's what happens to do-gooders in this kind of fight. So now I know it's coming, but I mean, that's what I am. I mean, that's why I went up to the Arctic. The whole reason I went up to the Arctic, I've never spent one day in telecom. I was speaking up there 10 years ago, and everywhere I went, they had dial-up speed. And I got all self-righteous. This is America, I've been to Africa and they've got high-speed internet. This can't stand in America. And so, 7 years later, and every goddamn dime I had, now they have high-speed internet throughout the Arctic. That's how that happened. And so that's just purely do-gooder driven, Sooner or later, I'll make some money up there. That hasn't happened yet either. And but sooner or later, but that's what will happen with AI. AI will be so threatening in the next few years that you'll see real organized resistance is what will happen.
Yeah.
That's what will happen.
Thanks.
Well, I did get one positive thing out of that. If it all goes to hell in a handbasket, at least we have our medicinal weed supply.
Yeah, that's it. Well, and recreational California where we're at. So we don't know any bounds out there. But yeah, so, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I think about all these things we're talking about a lot. I write a lot about it. I speak a lot about it. And I got to tell you, like Angela had mentioned, where the human mind and the human spirit hasn't caught up with, and maybe never will, the technology. We're always playing catch up. We're always reactive to it. And I think it's about to escape us. I think orbital velocity is about to be had with AI if it hasn't already been done. And I don't think we'll ever catch up as humans.
We're intelligent enough to build these things. We're not wise enough to know how to use them. And wisdom is something that has been left out of the school system, since I can remember anyway. It's not something we talk about even.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this is the first conversation I've had like this with the group ever. I bring it up from time to time. Nobody really will engage it. I've been to the U.S. government on these issues, especially the coronavirus issues. So I was in the arena on that before any American, and nobody will engage it. It's like, maybe it's already passed us to the point where your common person can't even understand what the issues are, let alone engage it. It could be that we're already there.
Well, God, that's an interesting thought. That your common person really can't think past just the logistical things that it can do. And
Well,
not
that's why I think this is my premise in AI. My premise is AI will fill the vacuum that lack of critical thinking is created in this country, especially in this country. When we stop thinking critically and stop teaching the classics, I'm a big guy. I've written endlessly on this. That when we moved away from the classics and went to formulaic learning, what happened was we lost the ability, except for 1% of us, we lost the ability to think critically. Now, what's filling in that void? Other people in AI are filling that void. Now, that cannot be good for society. That's not a good answer for society. And that's where we're at right now, I believe, that AI is filling that void.
And then you also talk a lot, and you have for years, about value creation. And you've talked about it a lot in business.
Yeah.
And you talked about it to me in regards to a country.
Yeah.
So not only have we gone this, and tell me if I'm paraphrasing this incorrectly, but not only have we gone toward just this very transactional way of thinking and living. How do I get more money? How do I, do all these things? How do I do what I want to do, or whatever that is? We're not talking about how do we create value, not only for ourselves and our businesses, but for the societies that we live in. And now our government is shaped by all of that too.
Yeah.
So they're
Yeah.
just modeling who we've become.
Well, this hits where I live, because I've spent the last 15 years writing on this exact point, and not just writing, but doing the research. Because the biggest problem America has is we have a value creation crisis in this country. And I can measure it back to when things globalized back about 30 years ago, when we went and China entered the World Trade Organization. We globalized our economy and, manufacturing. We sort of exported manufacturing, which is kind of a crazy thing when you think about it. And what ended up happening is, how I've measured this quantitatively is, I've been a teacher at Pepperdine. I don't want to hear any of you ever complain about your commute, because I've had a Charlotte to Malibu commute for 15 years and still do. But we, for about a dozen years, have measured on business owner side, are we creating more valuable companies, private companies? And 85% of the private companies in this country are destroying value on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis. And you'd say, well, why is that so important? That's 80% of our jobs, and 55% of the GDP is going down the toilet. And so then, okay, well, let's leave economics for a second, because I've proven the case. Economically, we are destroying value in this country. So how about socially? Are we creating value socially? Are we better neighbors? Are we better citizens? Well, okay, that's hard. Morally, are we morally bankrupt, or are we adding value morally? Well, I think every single major issue, we have a value creation crisis. And I think that's why we have large deficits. I think that's why we're more lonely than ever, because we're not creating value in our own ecosystem, let alone society. And I think it's there's a just comeuppance for all this, and I think we're about to pay it. That's my worldview.
Sorry, do we have more questions?
Well, it's 101, so we do have a couple more, and
Yep.
let me know when you want me to ask those.
Okay, yeah. So I did want to acknowledge that we're at the 1:00 mark for anyone who has to go. And I want to sum up just a little bit. If what I gleaned out of what we just talked about was, stay out of the metaverse, continue to think creatively, and use both sides of our brain, think critically, and own our own universe, if you will. And if it all gets way too much to handle, come see you for some medical intervention. That's what I got.
There it is. There it is.
Yep. So I'm going to wrap real quick, but anyone who wants to stay on, Rob has graciously agreed to stay with us and answer your questions and continue the conversation. But I'm going to give us a little wrap, and we'll get back to it. I do want to say thank you so much to Rob for his time and energy on our call, but also on all the preparation that went into it before, and all the conversations he had to suffer beforehand as well. If what we are doing resonates with you, there are things you can do. Jennifer is dropping those into the chat now. We would love for you to engage with us. Our next event is the Forum, and it will be on November 16th at 6 p.m. at the Beckler Museum of Art. This will be fun. We're going to host Dr. Allison Bickett, Director of Behavioral Medicine Education at Atrium Health, and the topic will be on the art of medicine. Thank you to our donors and sponsors again for making our work possible. And thank you, as always, for David Phillips for making us look good. This concludes our program for today. But as I said, feel free to hang around and we'll discuss a little bit more. All right, Jennifer, who's next?
Yeah, so Deborah asked earlier about, she was asking about the how easy it would be for hackers or others to use AI for very destructive purposes. When we open up this possibility, what else is made possible that we wouldn't want to see? She says data can never be completely protected. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, you know, the deep fake thing, I am just fascinated by the fact that it's a mathematical formula about 5 years ago that someone came up with. I can't remember who it was, but that's what enabled the deep fake technology to get unleashed to the point now where I could be, Angela and I were laughing, what if we were just engaged a firm to create deep fakes for us? Would this have gone any differently? Maybe not. Maybe not. And that's sort of a scary thing. And it's true that the data, I think what we're facing in our own companies is the cleanliness and the clean data is so important that I think there's going to be AI filters going forward. So you have an AI program that filters good versus bad data, outlier data out, because in our indoor agriculture, you have an issue. Somebody left the door open. Somebody, the electricity went out. Man, that really, if you have a lot of data coming in that's corrupt data, it really messes the model up and it doesn't know what to do. Another place where humans are far more capable than machines. And so I think there's going to be a yin and a yang fight on all of this right in the well, probably be in the metaverse, but we'll be at a bits and bytes level of fighting. So every time the deep fakes get better, you'll have a better program to fight the deep fakes. I think that's the way it's going to be. And I think, once again, a common person who doesn't have access or doesn't have that filter on their email system or whatever is going to be liable to fall for anything. Those deep fakes are good. I can't tell the difference. I mean, how could you? So,
well,
yeah.
that's a huge risk so if we're into farming AI, right, the way of AI farming, and that's creating, let's say 50% of our crops.
Yeah.
And now the espionage from another country or the terrorist act is to screw around with that and destroy 50% of a country's food supply, or put a virus into their healthcare AI and really mess up some people. I mean,
we've gone, here's the extent we've gone to on that already, because we see that coming. The possibility is once we get self-sufficient, these algorithms, by the way, once they have a certain amount of data and they train themselves, we call it, they become self-sufficient. I don't want to say self-aware, but I will say self-sufficient. And at that point, we only use local servers. So that greenhouse is cut off from the cloud in terms of data interchange. We do the whole thing in a server because we're concerned that somebody will hack in, and next thing you know, what are we growing at that point? Because there aren't going to be, we'll still have a couple of human techs in the greenhouse, but I'll tell you what, it can be subtle. Those changes could be subtle, and next thing you know, what are you growing? And so yeah, we have the ability to do both cloud AI as well as server AI.
Is that going to impact the cloud business, do you think?
No, because it all starts out with cloud. Even we start out with cloud. All of our stuff, as we're training these models, all happens out of Malaysia. So all our tech support is in Malaysia. None of it's in the US, none of it. So, but eventually when the model becomes self-sufficient, the algorithm becomes alive, then it's all done on local servers, because I just don't want there's too many things that could go wrong with when you're on the cloud like that. I'd rather have it done locally controlled.
Yeah, makes sense. I'm glad to know that there's some kind of measure of safety there.
Yeah. Anything else?
Anything else, Jennifer? Anybody else have any other questions?
Yeah. Anyone else want to jump on camera? You can raise your hand.
I had a question, Rob. Gonna post that on the chat, but I just wondering what you thought were in our democratic model and what we've been experiencing lately is that there is this kind of sense of paralysis because everybody has their opinion and at the end nothing gets done.
Right.
And I wonder versus this autocratic model where China says by 2030 all transportation is electric.
Right.
They stamped it, it's ready, it's going to happen. So what does that mean to democracy? What does it mean to these models of political systems that may have to be adjusted or changed? I mean, I remember in Mexico, I think it is where governors are voted in for six years, and they do what they do. They don't get reelected. They
Right.
just, it's a one-term thing. And I wonder, is this a model where we need to have a democracy, but it's alternating power every 4 years? You alternate, so you get stuff done. Whoever is in charge gets it done and move on to the next group. Or, what does it mean to the democratic process?
I mean, I guess the bigger question is which system crashes first, the authoritarian one or the democracy one?
Right.
Because it doesn't appear to me like either one's a perfect form
No.
of governance in this sort of technology world. I go back to what's the cause problem just in America. I'll just deal with. It's that lack of critical thinking. If most people who vote can't understand even the issues they're voting on, which I believe is the case. And when you have both political parties that are moving away from policy issues because that doesn't resonate. Policy no longer seems to resonate with the political party system. It's more of a what's the trigger thing that resonates.
Emotion.
Man, a democracy short-lived when it gets to that way, because sooner or later half the country's going to wake up and say, you know what, I got nothing and I'm not happy, as opposed to the mantra, I got nothing, you're going to be happy. I don't know that many people who don't have anything, who have no control. They feel like their kids aren't going to have anything, that are real happy about it. And I think we're going to face this decade, I think, a just comeuppance. That's part of the just comeuppance I'm talking about. They'll use universal basic income for a while just to keep people at home, but eventually that's not. There's more in our souls that need to be fed than just some digital currency in the wallet every month. That's how digital currency fits into this whole thing. There's 100% chance we're going to digital currency just like China, just for the control mechanism of when we go to universal basic income thoroughly, it's a much easier delivery mechanism. So that's what's going to happen here. Now the question is, what does this democracy / capitalistic experience look like? I don't know. I really don't know. It's not going to be good. It's not going to be like I grew up in. I know that. So.
Well, right, but whatever form of government we come up with, we still haven't solved for or even had the conversation of human frailties that drive it,
Right.
of the improper intent in the self-aggrandizing, selfish me, right? Where's the public good? Where are the conversations that are meaningful conversations and actions toward what's good for everybody? What's going to make society better that my kids and myself, we're all going to grow up in, right? And live in. So whatever form of government it is, if that piece is missing, it almost doesn't matter.
Well, that's why I think we need a 10-year reset. I've written endlessly about this. Every 40 years in the US, 1810s, 1850s, 1890s, 1930s, 1970s now, we have a massive economic reset in this country, a depression. And we should have had that in 2008, but then, little Timmy, everybody gets a trophy for participating in the US now, and the government wouldn't let everyone fail like they should have. Well, at some point, the government loses control over that aspect of it. And then we'll be forced to remake ourselves is what will happen. That's the interesting point, and I think it's coming the next year or two, by the way. That's the interesting time in America is, what do we really want to be at that point? And I think that's where the Democratic Republican parties are fighting right now for the soul of America, because they have two different views of that. And who knows if it's right or wrong, either one of them. But the fact of the matter is, we can't get there incrementally. I've taken over a number of failed businesses, both as an owner and as a manager. You cannot fix those businesses incrementally. you have to just wipe them out and start over. And that's what we have to do in this country. And the sooner our government lets that happen, the better we'll be on the back end of it. The way our election system works is it's not in any government official's benefit to be the cause of the wipeout, the reset, the great
And
reset.
we don't have the opportunity to revolt.
And well, there's little by little, there's more of an opportunity, but yeah, I mean, in a sense, it'll change the system. Yeah, that's right.
What is our timeline? I've heard some folks, don't worry about it, will not be in your lifetime. I heard folks say, no, this is happening in 3 years. What would you say is our you better be ready moment or year?
Well, for me, it was 2 years ago. I started getting ready with gold and all the various things you might consider for almost prepping behavior. A couple of years ago, then we printed $10 trillion between, the Federal Reserve and the federal government. If we hadn't done that, we'd already be at that moment because things have been sliding away. We've been on a slippery slope in the US, at least for a number of years. Economically, I'm talking about. And so it's an any day now thing for me. I expect it any day now. That's how I live my life. Thinking any day now.
The
Nothing
China
can stop
housing crash, you think that's going to have anything to?
It's usually
bear
the way
on it?
I've studied these great 40-year resets, and the way they typically have presented themselves or manifested is there's 3 different things that happen within a very short period of time together, not in one country, not all in the same country. And in this case, it could be China real estate collapses. It could be the Chinese government no longer willing to backstop, all the zombies. You think we got zombies. And so it could be that's at the same time where finally our stock market notices that we separate ourselves from earnings driving, stock prices 10 years ago. Earnings no longer are what drives it. What drives it's liquidity. And see, that's a real dangerous thing because liquidity, you have to constantly feed liquidity to keep that game. So what happens if you have 2 or 3 of these things happen all in the same 3 months? 10-year reset. A 10-year reset. It'll take 10 years to get to the other side. And that's the real moment of America. What do we look like on the other side? Place your bets on that one. Yeah, place your bets. So, yeah.
Anybody else?
Yeah, not happy thought. Anybody else want to ask any more happy things? Geez, you pull my string and this is what happens.
Well, there's still weed. We got that. I mean, if we need to check out because we just can't take it anymore. But unfortunately, I don't think anybody in this group is going that route.
Well, we haven't gotten to the point of how many passports you have. We haven't gotten to that point yet. I figured that'd be about the next question.
Wow.
All right. Well, thank you guys, everybody, for being here. Rob, thank you so much.
It's good to return to Charlotte every once in a while. I used to be a fixture here. Most of you guys don't know this, but for 10 years, I was in all the business journals nationwide, but it started in Charlotte. So that's how I got my, when I've written 800 articles, 500 of those were in the business journals.
Wow.
So every other week I'd write in the Charlotte Business Journal, and then it spread to 45 of them. That's it. So it all started 30 years ago for me in Charlotte. So I'll always have that in Charlotte. So it started. I'm still here in town. I'm here right now. So
yeah. Awesome. Well, we're really happy you could be with us today.
Thank
you for that.
Thanks for having me.
That was a great conversation. Really appreciate it.
All right. When everything goes to hell, let's talk again.
Okay, let's do. We'll still have Zoom.
All right, guys. Have a good one.
All right. Thanks so much. You too.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.